You're in the locker room. Welcome along, welcome back. Brought to you by the Tech Locker, the consultancy that looks to protect your technology investment. Episode 1 did okay. You know, we had 100+ views, something like that. I'll take that on episode 1. Good chunk of feedback on this. The audio downloads on Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts from as well. What did I learn from episode 1? I need better Wi-Fi connection. I need my own recording studio. I need to do a whole bunch of things, really. I need to talk less, none of which is changing this episode. You're welcome. But, a whole bunch of learnings and a whole things to take forward. But we've also got 9 confirmed speakers, 9 guests to join us in the locker room going forward as well, which is massively exciting. So a whole load of interesting facts and figures and things coming over sort of coming weeks and months. But welcome along, welcome back. If you missed the first episode, go catch up. Like, subscribe, buttons are somewhere around here. You'll see my logo in the background there. I've done some things to try and tidy myself up, Paul. But Paul is our guest today in the locker room. He's an author, he's a marketeer, he's a speaker. He's got more amazing, fascinating stories in this industry than I can ever aspire to have. And he's just generally an all-round lovely bloke. So, welcome to the locker room, Mr. Paul Randle. Tell us all about yourself.
Thanks, Neil. Lovely to be here, and hello to everybody out there in interweb world. So, a little bit about me. Aged career marketeer. So over 30 years plus in the game. And then about 5 years ago, my daughter walked up to me and completely out of the blue said, "Daddy, is your job good for the environment?" And I had no good answer to that. So went off and retrained myself, studied with Cambridge University Institute for Sustainability Leadership. And 2 things came out of that. One, I was given a whole bunch of tools to interrogate marketing to understand where its environmental, sustainable impacts were. And 2, found myself in a community of students. And when I introduced myself as a marketeer, got this horrible, "Ooh, aren't you the problem?" And ended up kind of cowering in the corner with feeling like devil's horns were creeping out of my head. With only a handful of other marketeers on the course. And it kind of gave me 2 options. One, I get out of marketing and go and become some sort of sustainability assessor or something. Or 2, I try and do something about it. So then spent a few years working with my co-partner, interrogating and doing lots of research into just how bad marketing is and how complicit marketing is in driving the sustainability challenges we have today. And, pulling no punches, it's shit. And I can go into the detail of where it's shit if we have more than 10 hours. But the important thing was what do we do about it? I speak to lots of sustainability leads who just say, why is marketing still a thing? They just want it to go. They just want the whole discipline to disappear because it just sells stuff that we don't need, and that has that environmental, that sustainable impact that we need to address. But marketing has a role. Marketing's very good at capturing hearts and minds, very good at changing behavior, and that's what we need more than anything at the moment is behavior change. It's just at the moment marketing's pointed at selling stuff rather than actually sustainable behavior change. So that became our mission. How do we turn marketing around?
Well, that's a simple job, right? That's a 5-minute gig. What are you doing for the rest of the week? So for the thousands of people who are watching this, clearly, in a kind of a nutshell, what defines sustainable marketing?
So sustainable marketing actually does a number of things. One, it recognizes the impact that marketing's had. So marketing's been around for centuries. Some academics will say it was invented by cavemen painting on the walls. I think, I can't imagine cavemen painting buy one club, get one free on their cave, but it's been around for a while, but actually got into its modern shape in the 1960s when our capitalist economic model was being laid down. And the economists of the time said that we'll deliver well-being in society by selling goods that delight customers. And it had two core assumptions in that. One was that we were rational humans who had perfect knowledge. So the marketeers of the time went, excuse me, we're rational and we know everything. I don't think that's quite right, but we can help. So marketing became the engine of growth by actually kind of like being able to understand the irrational human and motivate them to purchase, and actually solving the problem of knowledge. Where can I get my new mousetrap? And over the last 60 years has become a $740 billion industry that does that. And the way it's done that has been by building aspirational lifestyles that have become cultural norms. Marketing actually made it a cultural norm for us to express love through the purchase of a rock. You buy a diamond to prove you love somebody. You don't have to do that. Marketing created that. Marketing created the two-car family. Marketing turned Father Christmas red. Marketing created Black Friday. Marketing's created cultural norms and societal aspirations and the way we believe we're allowed to live our lives that are wholly unsustainable. And we've been doing that for 60 years, so they're well bedded into our society. So the first thing marketing's got to do is acknowledge that, and realize that it's got to help unpick that if we need to move to a sustainable society. It's also got to acknowledge some of its other impacts. A piece of work done by an organization called the Purpose Disruptors actually took some very genuine attribution methodology in marketing, which says I've done a campaign and I can prove it sold that product. So that's how good marketing actually works. But they took it one step further. So I did that campaign, I sold that product. That product's got this carbon footprint, which means I've got these advertised emissions. And by doing that analysis in the UK, they identified that advertising contributes 32% to the carbon footprint of each and every individual in the UK.
Wow, 32%.
32%, and it's going up. When they first did the report, it was 28%. It's now 32%.
Wow.
People don't realize just how impactful the industry is in driving us in the wrong direction. So sustainable marketing is about acknowledging that first and foremost, acknowledging just how complicit marketing is in the challenges we have. Secondly, it's about changing the mindset and the toolkit of the marketeers to actually drive for a sustainable future. In a sustainable future, we still have irrational people with imperfect knowledge. We just need to change their behavior. So the toolkit, the skills, the expertise of marketing needs to be kind of, evolved and maintained. But it needs to be pointed in this new direction towards sustainability. And what we say, through the model we built a model called the Sustainable Marketing Compass, is here's a toolkit that allows you to start doing that. And what it doesn't do is provide all the answers. It actually highlights all the pockets of excellence, like the Purpose Disruptors report that's going on around the industry. But at its heart, what it does is give a new role for marketing. That role that marketing adopted 60 years ago was the engine of growth. Marketing's new role sits in organizations that have commercial targets, because we still have to make money, environmental targets, and societal targets. And it sits in the middle, kind of this regulator valve, the flight deck of the Enterprise, kind of balancing all the controls out to say, if I overcook on my commercial performance, I'll blow my sustainability targets. By driving some of my sustainability goals, I might be disadvantaging a particular part of society. So actually, I can't do that either. And we call it stretching the balloon. The marketeer's got to stretch the resources across those three kind of pillars and those three tensions in a way that delivers a sustainable lifestyle. Which for
how do we pick that apart? Because the pressure in current industry and current business, given the emergence of things like AI, you type a question into a AI tool of choice and it gives you your essay. I have to keep it away from my lad at high school all the time because it just cheats. But in terms of the capability of technology, it almost gives you an added impetus to go faster. The whole first to market thing from a business perspective. You've got to be on pace, and that's where marketing, as you kind of alluded to a moment ago, it's always earned its corn, earned its stripes, because that's what gives you that footprint. So does technology become implicit in the problem, the solution, or is it somewhere in between? And is it down to the business to learn how to adopt the right strategy?
It's the latter. I mean, it plays in both camps. It's causing massive problems. It also has huge potential to solve things. AI has been used in marketing for years, and it's increasingly being used in marketing. So AI has been used to do propensity modeling on whether you would buy a certain product or not. And early use of those technologies and those algorithms was really diversive and injected loads of accidental bias that nobody wanted to be put in there, but actually drove loads of bias into society. Harvard Business Review did a study that actually identified that the use of predictive modeling and AI data modeling to kind of understand when you're going to buy a product and therefore allow marketeers to give you an offer or something to incentivize to make that purchase, which is used everywhere, in e-commerce. Harvard found that actually what those technologies do is look for biobehavioral signals. But actually, the most affluent individuals in society are more comfortable in expressing biobehavior signals. They're more happy to go and research on purchasing things because they know if they wanted to afford it, they probably could. The less affluent don't. So actually, the consequence of that is that those algorithms give a better price to the most affluent individual. So, that's where AI and that's where technology is poorly used can be very damaging. There's also some horrible places those technologies can go. There's certain industries that are very damaging, that are struggling to recruit good quality marketeers because people just don't want to work in particular sectors. I'm aware that some of those brands that operate in those sectors are going to the agency community to say, I've got millions to invest in AI to automate my marketing so I don't have to recruit people. Wow. So facilitating, companies that we don't want to carry on selling to sell. That's where technology is a dangerous, dangerous tool. At the same time, it can really, really powerful and really, really motivating. So one of the things we're trying to explore is how we understand the brain print of marketing. So you, I, everybody else watching this probably gets between 4,000 to 10,000 media impressions a day. And 72% of them, according to research, of those messages are based on what's called inadequacy marketing. Paul, why is your hair so grey? Why haven't you been on the bike today? Why haven't you bought the latest jacket or the latest shoes? It makes you compare yourself against your peers and come up wanting. So 4,000 to 10,000 times a day, we're all being told we're not good enough. That has a societal impact on our health and our well-being. And that's been a concept that's been around since the World Wildlife Fund coined it back in the early 90s. The Guardian tried to do something about addressing it, in the early 2000s, but it's never really been tackled at the industry level. AI gets really exciting because what AI could potentially do, once appropriately trained, is actually analyze all the messages that we're delivering into society and start to quantify where we're being positive and where we're being negative, where we're being biased, where we're being diversive. So actually the industry can start adopting a duty of care and understanding that sort of impact. Now, just previously, we haven't been able to do that because it's just such a massive job. But that's where technologies like AI can really start coming in and really start making a difference. The other thing as well is, there's this horrible stat that only 3% of the footage filmed to create ads only ever sees the light of day.
3%?
3%. So
And
you've got all
what's the average cost of running one of those from either, I guess, a carbon footprint perspective? But I mean, there's all sorts involved in there. 3% seems incredibly low.
yeah, the whole marketing industry is massively wasteful. If you take a step back, we're the only global industry that can actually celebrate being 1% good at what it does.
Is that true?
Well, think about it. A marketeer will celebrate a 1% success rate on a campaign. And you can look at lots of different channels, lots of different media. You look into social media, for example, and actually getting a kind of 0.01% conversion rate on your campaign is often a good thing. So when you add up all the different types of channels, from out-of-home advertising and direct mail and TV and everything, you roughly get to around about 1%. And marketers are so focused on the optimization of that 1%, they actually ignore the fact that 99% of what they do is wasted. It's all down to a very famous marketer called John Wanamaker, who coined the phrase 50% of what I do in what I spend in marketing is wasted. The trouble is I don't know which 50%. Today, with all our data and all our knowledge and all our kind of like tech prowess, we know exactly what 1% worked, but we're so focused on actually optimizing that 1%, we just ignore the 99% waste. So you take, say, for example, direct mail. The average carbon footprint of a piece of an email with an attachment on it, like a newsletter, is about 50 grams of carbon. Open rates in the UK for a good, well-targeted piece of direct mail can be about 14%. So you'd send that email to a database of 10,000 people, you've wasted 410 kilograms of carbon.
Wow.
So
That's scary. Those are scary numbers, and so from my perspective, and to be completely transparent, I'm going to learn as much today as many other people watching this video. I'd imagine this is not a particular area of expertise, but it is an area of interest, and those kind of figures. Yeah, I've been in this game 25 years, and nobody's ever talked about it in these kind of terms. And I guess that's what you're saying, that we have to do something now before it gets infinitely worse. Given some of the numbers you're talking around there and some of the problems and challenges, how aware and how focused are the chief execs on, firstly, I guess, understanding, and secondly, looking to address them in a competitive landscape?
It's a really good question. And as you would expect, there's no one consistent answer for all the big chief execs. You've got different companies approaching it in different ways, with different levels of passion and different reasons why they're doing it. So you can look at some of the really big organizations, such as Microsoft, which are doing a huge amount in this space. It's very much a focus. It's been there for a long time. And then you've got others that are having to catch up, and I think that's always the case in any transformation in industry. I think the interesting thing that chief execs are battling with at the moment is that, by and large, all the big technology companies have built out some sustainability capability. They've hired the teams, they've got the resource, they've got a strategy in place. But very much like the early days of digital transformation, that muscle, that capability has been built on the corner of the building in a center of excellence, whilst the rest of the business over here carries on doing the proper business. And actually, we've got to that kind of juncture where the two need to come together. Just as digital technologies have become the water we all swim in, sustainability has got to become the new water that we all swim in. And that's where I think the chief execs have their biggest challenges, because that forces them to address things like growth with environmental and societal performance. And you'll end up in lots of conversations where people start talking about things like degrowth or green growth, or lots of circular economy and things of that nature. It's where you take kind of capitalistic model and say, well, it's not really fit for purpose anymore. And some estimates say there's like at least kind of 10 different economic models floating around at the moment that chief execs are trying to wrestle with.
So it's a fairly big one to tackle in that sense, and I guess from a startup perspective, if you look at this as a startup, your chief execs are typically those classic X-shaped individuals who try and do a bit of everything, and they tend to have to do everything. Wear many hats. Startups, you typically less available resources, so you tend to have to do a lot of things. So you've got a bit more of an eye and a bit more insight, however self-taught that may be, on some of these topics. In your larger corporations, clearly have bigger teams who do this, and it's a bit easier to have the wool pulled over your eyes, in the sense of, I'm leaving my team to do the job. They're telling me it's all fine. They're telling me they're reducing my footprint. I did a little bit of reading before we spoke around something called greenwashing, where we're kind of trying to tell the world that everything's fine, we're reducing our footprint, this is a socially responsible product, packaging, wherever it may be. So, and I'm not comparing the two for a second, but if you look at something like the betting and gambling industry, where people have different views as to how ethical those kind of online services are, and that's a challenge to markets, a challenge to bring people along the journey there. Does it not almost create a similar half a sideways look at all industries when we're saying something about how socially responsible we are and our products and services are? Has it added a layer of cynicism that's going to be just as hard to battle as the problem itself?
I'd agree. I think greenwashing is a massive issue. But being very, very honest about greenwashing, the majority of it is accidental. It's because you're in a scenario where, you have a very complex topic in sustainability, how you reduce your carbon, how you reduce waste and impacts. It gets really technical really quickly. And the marketing community, is woefully behind on its knowledge and its understanding of sustainability, especially in the agency community. Organizations may have had a sustainability environmental policy strategy for like a couple of decades because legislation's told them to do so. The marketing team's probably not paid any attention, apart from a bit of CSR reporting, and the agency world's had nothing to do with it, and all of a sudden they're being asked to communicate these green messages and green credentials, and they're just getting it wrong. The CMA, the Competitive Markets Authority in the UK, put out the greenwashing code a year or so ago, and its research indicated that 42% of all green claims in the UK are spurious or incorrect. So greenwashing kind of is become a real pandemic in its own right. It's a real issue. As a result, your legislative bodies, like the EU and the UK and most countries around the world, are putting legislation in place to stop it. So very recently, as a matter of weeks ago, the EU announced its new legislation on the phrases you can or can't use. So, for example, you can't use carbon neutral. There is no such thing. So actually where you see products like, packet of falafel or saying it's carbon neutral, or you can fly carbon neutral, to be perfectly honest, that's bollocks. You can't. If you're on a plane, it's belching out aviation fuel out the back of it. What's carbon neutral about that? You may have planted a few trees, but that's elsewhere. So the way that the marketing industry has kind of been trying to message around sustainability is just wrong, and legislation's come in to put guidelines around that. Now they've come with some severe penalties. And compare this to GDPR, right? GDPR world, just as much as I do. It's like when GDPR came out, everybody was scared silly about it. I mean, I must have been trained 4 times on it to make sure I didn't fall foul of it, because it was 4% of global turnover. That was the fine that could be levied on you. The UK will fine you 10% of global turnover if you get caught greenwashing.
Wow.
Yet the industry isn't in a massive panic to train everybody. It's just kind of obliviously bumbling through. Now your chief marketing officer is scared silly of this. And actually there's some research done by Forrester that indicates something like 90% of chief marketing officers want to talk about the sustainability credentials of their organization, but daren't because of fears of being caught greenwashing. So we now have something called green hushing, where companies are not talking about it, which is arguably more damaging because, at least when we're talking about green products, it puts it in the mindset of the shopper that I've got a sustainable version to consider. Now, whether that's message right or wrong, it's driving that purchase consideration. Take that away from the mindset of the shopper, and they're not going to carry on buying from a sustainable point of view. So it actually acts as an anchor on our transition to a sustainable world. So greenwashing, green hushing is a massive issue. You've got other variants of that coming in. So everybody's been talking about carbon, and having your carbon footprint. Biodiversity is rapidly becoming as an important topic to consider. If you read any of David Attenborough's books, just what we've done to the biodiversity on the planet is horrendous. So actually how we address biodiversity and how organizations address biodiversity is going to become as important as the carbon footprint. So we're going to be in an era of biodiversity washing. This is
going to get very, very difficult for people to comprehend. It's like if the people who are living and breathing this stuff, if they're terrified as to what to say and what not to say, where do the rest of us stand? So I guess, and you've touched on the compass a couple of times, and providing frameworks and toolkits to help drive the change. I guess, the two-part question. One, how exactly do we evoke that kind of change? Is it a bit like one of those IT security questions? It's everybody's responsibility. We all have a part to play in this, but how do we evoke change, presumably from the top down in all of these organizations? Otherwise, it won't happen. And secondly, where's the movement? What kind of scale of the movement is the movement at the moment? Because, with the greatest of respect, you and the people you work with can't change the world. So how big a movement is this?
Very good question. I mean, I think the first question, it's carrot and stick. And that which one you deploy depends on where you're talking in an organization and the organization, and even down to you or I, how we respond to sustainability. For some individuals, they're only going to change behavior when you scare the pants off them, where you talk about the doom and gloom and the kind of end of the world sort of scenarios. For others, there's a commercial opportunity in here. For others, it's more of a altruistic thought on doing the right thing, and you have to tune your messages to the right individuals to get them to change their behavior and to move forward. And I think that's where a lot of sustainability has got it wrong. The scientists of this world are awesome community of individuals. They're very good at scaring the pants off us, and as human beings, we get scared to a point, and then we bring our own defensive barriers in to start ignoring that. And it's kind of like we've all seen all the fires and all the floods and everything coming through the news on a daily basis. After a while, you kind of get blind to it, So there's no one consistent approach there. It's definitely kind of like, how do each individuals and organisations respond to different stimuli?
So who do you fear that scenario? Who do you look at and go, you've got like decades worth of change ahead of you? Who do you worry for most, industry wise, I guess?
That's a really good question. I mean, I think a way to think about that is where can you have the most impact and the biggest change. There's lots of wonderful startups. We're talking about small startups and stuff like that. And I speak to loads of startups, loads of tech startups that are B Corp right from the start, sustainable right from the start. They're very purpose-centric in exactly what they do, and they're doing wonderful work. But their impact's quite tiny because they're a small startup, unless they become the unicorn and grow and that sort of thing. The other end of the scale, you've got the oil and gas companies of this world that, despite all their kind of greenwashing, and they kind of invented greenwashing, are pulling in the wrong direction. So your Shells, your Exxon Mobils of this sort of world that are kind of supposedly moving to, sustainable futures, but are actually divesting away from their renewable strategies. It was only yesterday, I think, that Shell said that, it got a whole strategy around sustainable hydrogen, and actually it's laying off a whole percentage of the people in that team now and reinvesting back in other areas. So you've got companies that are the most damaging on the planet pulling in the wrong direction and using greenwashing and lobbying to make it look like they're doing the right things. Then you've got the middle ground. where you've got companies that have been running traditionally, have impacts, have some, substantial big impacts, FMCG, manufacturing, stuff like that, but want to do the right thing and want to transform. And they're the ones where you can have the biggest impact. They're the ones where you can get the biggest scale. And it means that you kind of have to go in and acknowledge them kind of impactful at the moment, but how do you move them forward, and how do you make that transition as quick and effective as possible? And it leads you into some really interesting conversations. At the Net Zero Festival last year, I watched a fascinating debate where some people were exploring this and saying, actually, we shouldn't be investing in startups. We should be investing in Coke to help them take plastic bottles out of their manufacturing. And that feels counterintuitive, because it's like, they're rich. Why are we having to invest in them? But actually, if you take that out of the equation and say, we've just got to stop their impact now because we're running out of time, you half see the point. I mean, it is down to them to change. But actually, that's where we're going to get the most scale and impact, by those big legacy industries really getting their act together.
Yeah, I think interestingly, my TV in the background has been listening to this, and it's now trying to turn itself off. It's supposed to please stop wasting energy and turn me off. So 1 second. It suddenly occurred to me as we were talking there, actually, that a couple of the comments will be, "But you've got a TV burning in the background, so that's not cool." Yeah, so there's clearly a lot to do here, and you let's say you're on a bit of a mission as much as you can in order to inform, to educate. I know you're speaking at an event coming up to on this topic, Paul.
Yeah, we're speaking at the Net Zero Festival. One this year, we were at the Blue Earth Summit a couple of weeks ago. So we're getting out as much as possible. I mean, your second question is like, how can a small community of people make the change, and is that community getting bigger? The good news is it is getting bigger. The Compass model that myself and my co-partner founded, we pitched back into Cambridge University, the Institute for Sustainability Leadership. They've used it in their new course on sustainable marketing, and I sit on the advisory panel for that and assess on it. So I actually see on a daily basis student after student after student going through this learning curve. So we're seeing the community get bigger. We put the Sustainable Marketing Compass out as an open source framework, so anybody can use it. It's not something you say you've got to pay us to actually use it. And we're seeing more. We had 750,000 people view it within 24 hours when we launched it. So there's a passion, there's a movement. Is it the scale we need, and is it the pace we need? No, absolutely not. And you'll see the UN and the IPCC and everybody kind of cracking the whip, to get things moving forward. And that's where some of the alarm bells from our UK government on relaxing and taking their foot off the accelerator is highly alarming from that point of view. And you almost have to ignore those government messages and double down on your commitment to driving change. But it is getting bigger. It is becoming more the norm. I think we've got a long way to go, but you have to remain optimistic. Paul Polman, who leads a lot in this space, says it's too late to be pessimistic.
I love that. I've heard that before. That's a great one.
Which I've kind of got written down on the corner of my desk. It's so easy to get depressed and pessimistic about this stuff, and if we are, we'll give up. So we are getting bigger, we are getting faster, we are getting better. It's 2 steps forward, 1 step back, but it is too late to be pessimistic.
What a great quote. I'm gonna pull that. That could well be on the teaser reel, because I think that's a really important message, and there's a lot of those in here. I'll post a link to the Compass if you don't mind, as well as the Net Zero in the comments of this feed, and likewise your book, which is available for pre-order, which again starts to educate and advise and point people in the direction we should all be moving in. There's some really horrifying numbers in there. You can't get away from that, and I think like you just touched on, it is kind of all of our responsibilities to help turn the tide on this and to win hearts and minds and start to take those steps forward. There is almost something encouraging about not being able to take a step backwards, really, from where we are. You have to go forward. It's kind of a better place to be, I guess. Takes out some of the apathy from some people's perspective. I guess what's your big wish? If you have one wish on your Christmas list for this, what would your one big wish be?
It starts with the individual, right? We've been thinking about this a lot. You can rely on big tech finding all the solutions to kind of capturing carbon out of the atmosphere. You can rely on governments to put legislation in place to stop certain things happening and things. Yes, and they are absolutely needed. But actually, it all starts with personal commitment to being on the right side of history. And if everybody kind of ponders between now and Christmas, and that New Year's resolution is in my personal life and in my work life, and for most people, their work life's more impactful than their personal life, I'm going to be on the right side of history. And I'm going to spend that first few months of January figuring out which side am I on at the moment. So if everybody on the planet did that, that would be massively impactful. Alexis, my co-founder, has this great phrase. It's kind of like, it's just one plastic straw, said 8 billion people.
And I can't think of a better and more powerful statement to kind of draw this one to a close. Paul, this has been hugely informative. I've scribbled down a whole bunch of things that I did not know before this session. I think a lot of us have to take something away from this, even if it's just that one straw. Those are hugely powerful statements, and something that I think we all definitely have to get behind. When I'm talking to senior leaders in business around the tech strategy, typically, you try and broaden that out so that it has much more of a reach than just which operating system and which cloud provider should I use. It's very much more holistic than that. And from this perspective, you certainly sharpen my pencil around the types of conversations that I'll be looking to engage in. Last question. This is the locker room. What's in your locker, Paul, that's made you successful over the years?
That's a really good question. I'd love to say it's my bike, but then I was completely failed when it came to being a competitive cyclist. So that's not in there anymore. I think for me, the thing I've always had in my locker room is the ability to stitch things together. Is an ability to kind of take the step back and say, well, here's a whole bunch of dominoes that are connected, and if that one's going to go down, all these are going to go down. And that's been really important in my sustainability journey, because all things in sustainability are connected to each other. So actually, I'd probably say the thing that's in my locker room is a box of dominoes, because it keeps reminding me that everything has a knock-on effect.
I love that.
And you have to be aware of them. You also need to know when to put the brake in. I always remember watching those videos of like the dominoes going down, the big domino arts where they knock them all down and things. Yeah. And it's like, when they're building them, they have to put the brakes in, otherwise somebody's going to knock one over accidentally and the whole lot's going to go down. So you need to be aware of the cascade, but also where to stop it.
That's superb. And Lee Summerfield in episode 1 spoke of his ability to be patient. I would imagine that's played its part in your career as well, in terms of some of the scale of change that you've looked to deliver.
Yeah. Timing's very interesting, actually, because this is where the sustainability community feels at odds with the rest of commerce. Sustainability, you're talking epochs. It's kind of like sustainability talks about moving from the Haliocene into the Anthropocene. This isn't like from 1 year or 1 decade into another. This is from kind of the last 10 million years into the new epoch. And marketeers think about real time. So time's interesting, and you have to really kind of take the step back when you're considering sustainability, and think long term and big impacts and things. So time's an interesting dimension.
once again, that really kind of sharpens the mind on exactly what we're working with here. It's almost like you've done marketing before. Thank you.
There's one thought, and we often start our training courses off with this, is that we start off by asking people, what time is it? And we bring it back to this point that actually, the whole of the planet that's been around for billions of years moved from one epoch to the new epoch, which people are calling the Anthropocene, in about 1962. So what are the chances of us being alive when the Earth has gone through such a pivot? And it blows thoughts around the millennium completely out of the water. We're talking billions of years here. And the reason why we've made that move is because the most powerful transformative force on the planet that's dictated this shift into the Anthropocene has now become man. And actually that's happened over the last 50 years. That's the one thing to take away, from sustainability, is just how impactful we are, that we've actually changed the planet.
And there's definitely no escape from that. Well, you plenty to reflect on in this one. My head's swimming with all of the things you've just given me, but some really impactful statements that I think we all need to hear, whether we like them or not. We all need to hear quite how big a part we play as individuals, as humans, as man, in the broader sense. And from a business and commerce perspective, what is it that we should be thinking about? We can't stick our fingers in our ears and cover our eyes. This is a thing. We've got to tackle this. Thank you so much for coming on and sharing all of that. I'll post links to your book, which is available for pre-order, the event that you're speaking at shortly, and also to the Compass, so people can delve into all of those at their leisure and take a look. Like, subscribe the videos to make sure that you keep up to pace with this video and everything else, whether you watch us on YouTube, whether you listen to us on Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts. And I'll be doing on Spotify only, I'll be doing the reflection video where I somehow try and piece together all of my thoughts after all of that and reflect back on what I've taken from this really fascinating time with yourself, Paul. So thanks again for giving that up. Until next time, catch everybody in the locker room with our next fascinating guest. Take care, guys.